Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
We're back at you, Gloves Off, and today I have a great guest, former city councilman, entrepreneur here in Laredo. He knows the ins and outs, and we're going to be touching base on this controversial bond of $417 million. With me today, we have Gene Belmares. How we doing, Gene? You doing good, my brother?
Good, doing good, brother. Looks like the bond's got your beard looking whiter now. It's making us all nervous, isn't it?
Yeah, every time I shave, it comes out whiter. So let's see where we go the next time, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this bond, the bond is the big talk of the town right now. I've been visiting with some folks from out of town who, are either coming into Laredo to do business or have already set up business, and they're just kind of trying to get the lay of the land. And part of that discussion is, well, what does this mean to us in terms of cost? And I recently did a presentation in another municipality on their water and wastewater system. And the first question out of the council was, well, what's this going to cost us, the city first, he said, and then, the residents. They're going to be a rate hike. And when you look at this bond, that's the first question that everybody's asking. Well, what's 417 million in bonds going to cost me, the average citizen? And the information we're getting out so far, and we've got a limited amount of information, and we can talk about that. I think it's important to tell people, about the apathy that we're seeing. But we get this limited amount of information about what that's going to cost us. There's no scale that you can look at. They give you look. I've been in sales for 40 plus years, the last 40 of them in some management capacity. An entrepreneur. I've got a great business partner and a great team, and we, our business has been around almost 13 years. We just celebrated our 13th year. And you look at that and you say, I'm going to sell this to you and I'm going to reduce it to the ridiculous. So I tell you that this is going to cost you 5 cents a day for $11 a month, for $20 a month. They kind of pitch it to you. You've seen all those commercials on TV, Tunnels to Towers and others, great organizations, but they reduce that fee or that donation that they're asking for to the ridiculous $11, the cost of a cup of coffee a day, right? Something along those lines. But the reality, it has greater impacts than that, because if you own a home in Laredo, Texas of $200,000, you're going to pay approximately $600 more a year, more or less, once you pay, your appraised value increases for this year and the new tax rate that'll include the new interest and sinking fund add-on of 10 cents is what they're paying. And so you're going to wind up paying $1,600 for every $100,000 valuation. I mean, for every $1,000 valuation, and you wind up with $16 a month. But if it's $200,000, it's $32 a month. So there you go. The impact to the small business owner like myself, who might have a $2, $3, $4 million building, the entrepreneur who's got a warehouse that's worth $5 million, and he's struggling to make ends meet. He's nervous about the tariffs that are going on, and we've seen the stock market today, what it's doing. That could potentially mean whether he hires another person or not, whether he grows his business or not, whether he can pay his note tomorrow or not. And so it has impacts beyond the single family residential taxpayer, right? This is going to impact all of us, whether you own a home, a business, large restaurant, small business, it doesn't matter. It's going to come across. The questions that need to be asked at this point, okay, well, what am I getting for this? And how did we get here? For 32 years, the city of Laredo managed its business well enough because we have some great enterprise funds, the bridge, the solid waste and the landfill now. You also have environmental and utilities. The airport is a special use fund, but it really is an enterprise fund of sorts. It's a special use fund because it's got some special rules that it has to abide by. When you look at all that, I mean, that's the money that the city right now is using to feed its general fund, because without it, it wouldn't have enough for M&O, for maintenance and operation. So the question then is, if I can afford to do this, and this is going to be my impact to my taxes, my personal taxes, my business taxes, once we have all this in place, how will we pay for it, right? How do we pay for the M&O, for the new hires, the police officers, the firefighters, the 75 to 50 people that the health department wants to hire, which I had on its slide, the additional people that might be needed to administer the paving program, and so on and so forth. So you have to look at the M&O. And the city, unfortunately, capped at 3.5% of new revenue. That's not new taxes, right? Your tax rate can't go by 3.5%. What the state said in SB2 back in 2019 was that cities can no longer raise its revenue by more than 3.5% without either lowering their M&O rate, their INS rate, or going to the voters for permission to a higher tax rate, which is what's happening now. This 417, because it is going to trigger that, it has to go to a referendum for types of bonds.
Right.
The city right now has $211 million in debt that it showed in one of their budget and one of their CIP books. But I think I heard in the town halls that it's down to about 180. Under the current about 11 cents, the city can raise 20-year note, 4%, about $299 million. So if that's accurate, then the city right now has in its credit card available about 120 without having to raise your taxes, without having to go to referendum. They can pass COs and take care of all the police cars that they're asking for, all the tactical gear that they need, the cameras for the parks, the equipment for fire, and possibly squeeze in there the beginnings of the program. Now, obviously, it's not going to have $90 million for the health, and it certainly doesn't have $10 million for the Hamilton. By the way, could probably be done with a revenue bond. I hadn't asked that question yet, why they didn't choose that mechanism, because the Hamilton does generate revenue from its rentals, and why it has or didn't look at a revenue bond for that. With that 120, have a lot of some more time to look at what and if you saw the information that they've done and some of the stuff that's back and forth amongst council and workshops that they've had, there's a slide in there that says if this thing fails, we're going to look at all of the departments, reassessing and realigning our resources, eliminating certain cost measures or delaying those cost measures. And they have some additional funding mechanisms, some fees, tax supported loans, some other stuff that they were. Well, my question for everybody is, well, why didn't they do that first? Why not go through the organization, optimize everything, get it as efficient as you can? I'm not advocating for a Doge style approach to that. I'm advocating for them to do that first and then say, look, we have all our possibilities of efficiency. We've optimized to the core. Any leaner, and this thing's going to run hot. We're not going to have enough to do what we need to do. And then you can come back and legitimately say, I need to borrow money to do the following, right? And so the 10 cents it's going to raise is going to allow them to borrow an additional 300 million. They already have about 120 on their credit card, 17 that they're at right now. So the question is, well, do we vote for it or do we vote against it? Well, like I've said before, well, my role in this whole thing, just as a citizen, is I've got a personal opinion which how I'm going to vote on it for the now, based on what I know. But for the general public, they just need to know. They need to get more information out there, and they haven't done a good job. Now, you and I were talking before the show started about voter apathy. What are your thoughts about it?
Voter apathy, huh? You know, I went to the town hall meeting that they had last week. I was the only one there. And then
You're the guy. You're the soul.
The only civilian there. So I was asked by one of the assistant city managers as well as the city manager that if I wanted to hear the whole program for just one person or they can cut it off. And I said, let's just cut it off. Let everybody go home. You know, I already came. I saw what I wanted to see, and I was right. And the problem is that they changed the story because nobody showed up because of the weather. No, I showed up. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't about the weather. And I live on the north side, and I had to drive over there to the south. But when I went because I went, Gene, for one reason. I wanted to find out what they were talking about because I'm hearing a lot of numbers. I'm hearing a lot of people for and against it. And the ones that are for are usually people that work for the city. The ones that are against it are the civilians, you know, if you want to put it that way, the business owners, they're against it.
Yeah.
And I get their point.
The non I like to refer to them sometime.
Right. And we've, I've been just, we've had our business here has been here since 90. We're still here. And right now we're trying to expand in the last couple of years into several different areas. And we've had these conversations before. There seems to be a rate where the raise in the local rentals here space is very, very high. Okay, extremely high, higher than many other cities. And with this tax rate that's going to go up, well, guess what? The rents are going to go up. People say, "Oh, I have it locked up for 3 more years or 5 more years," but that comes by very quick. And all of a sudden, guess what? Now you're going to renew, and they're going to pop in another $500 a month. So a lot of we're not small business friendly, even though we try to say that we are, and we're not. We're the number one
inland port.
Now we're shooting ourselves in the foot with all those warehouses are 10 millions. They're millions of dollars worth of each one. What are we doing?
Yeah, let me correct myself. I mean, we're the largest port.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
New York and others. But to your point about voter apathy, the fact that people didn't show up, I mean, a case could be made just looking at what's going on nationally right now, that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences, good or bad, depending on what side you're on. You're either happy as a lark or you are mad as a bee that's been invaded. Right? These elections, as small as they may be, consequences, and I dare say, that the closer the election is to you and what you do every day, what I is out the door issues. You open the door, my garbage picked up, is my street paved? Is there a police officer close by? Is the government functioning as it should? Those, I think, are even more important because these are the things that have immediate impact to you. I don't know if all the things that are happening at the federal level will ever reach down to me. They might, you and others, but they may have to go through the state before they come to me, and certain things happen along the way as the money comes, multiple bureaucracies that exist. But when it comes to city stuff, boards, college, when those guys start raising your tax rates, that's something tomorrow. When your tax bill comes due, when they raise your water rates, when they raise your sewer, garbage fees, and your stormwater, all that. Parks and Rec, when they have to charge operate those multi-dollar vacant rec centers, that all costs money to you instantly, right? It's a quick impact. And so I see these elections have consequences. People aren't going to the town. And you can argue that the city did a horrible job of putting those together. In that business, full disclosure, I wanted to do that promotion. I thought my company would do a better job. So that's just me. And for those out there that are going to say, well, it's just sour grapes. He didn't get the contract, so he's upset. No, I truly believe that my team is doing what's called a live streamed broadcast meeting where it's interactive. You and I right now could invite other people to participate in this conversation. We can see them raise their hands. They can ask for questions in the chat. Open the mic for them. We can turn on their camera if they want us to. I don't always recommend that because you never know what you're going to see when that camera comes. But you have community engagement at that point. You're getting all these questions lined up to the meeting even starts because people are logged on and waiting, and they're asking questions in the chat. And you're ready to answer them. And then if somebody didn't meeting could go, where they can go see it. They can go see the questions that were asked. They can see the city manager as articulate as he is, telling story on why they should pass this, because obviously they can't do that. So we're at that point now, Paul. Here we are, weeks away from early voting, and there's still a lot of questions to be asked.
And the voter apathy's there. And I'm going to continue with the voter apathy because I think that is a very important key point here in Laredo. Okay. When I went to the town hall meeting, there were about 60 people there, between 40 to 60 people, all work for the city. There were at least 20 firemen counting air molecules, and there were about another 15, 20 police officers doing the same thing. Nice guys. You can go out there and joke around with them and so on and so forth. But for the regular folks that come in, it's very intimidating when you have all these people from the city go in there. And if you ask a question, everybody puffs up their chest and comes in there and comes, you know what I'm saying? And you get sidetracked and blah, blah, blah. So people really don't want to go pay that.
Well, I mean, you're right. I think they've had that experience before, don't you think? I mean,
yeah, many, some. So when people say, I don't want to go through that again, then you have people telling me, Paul, do you trust the police with the election? I go, what do you mean? Just 2 years ago, police officers were caught with voter fraud. Do you trust them in the union?
Yeah.
Look, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Only for this reason, Paul. Those are things that detract us from the mission at hand, and that is to learn about the bond. I get it. There are bad apples in all organizations. I've worked for companies that, we had to terminate people because of their bad behavior, things of that nature. But that doesn't make the whole core.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I'm talking of the citizens out there. They see all this stuff that's under. So how do we bring the faith back? They're not bringing the faith back into the city. Well, there's no trust.
Well, I agree. I think that's part of the messaging that they're missing, right? There's no trust.
No trust.
Well, I heard it said at one of the town halls that this was supposed to be a good campaign. We're trying to make a good referendum that would increase your taxes a feel good, and is like advertising a root canal as a field trip. This is going to be fun. You'll enjoy it. It's just not palatable that way. So what you do, going in that people are nervous about this and they're worried about their taxes and how to pay bills and stuff once it goes up. And business owners are just like right now, they're thinking what tariffs are their businesses. We order products that come in, promotional products that come in from China, India, other places. We order from U.S. They buy that, made in China. But we're worried about our business as well. So what you do is you give them as much information to allay their fear. So big plus in a good campaign message. I know it's hard to trust government, but we're going to do these things, and here's why we do these things. There are certain rules that are built when you do these kind of things. Let's break down the police department, for example. Police department is asking for a building for its headquarters, asking for a training facility, a whole slew of vehicles marked and unmarked. It's asking for tactical gear, and they slid in cameras in there that belong to parks at that particular day. When those covenants are written for those bond sales, they are barred from using that money for anything else. Plus, this bond, as the type of bond that they're selling, can only be used for brick and mortar and equipment. It can't be used to pay personnel. It can't be used to give the council members raises, because all that's is it's not coming from M&O. Council members would get their maintenance and operation, a different fund. They need every penny of that. Police officers, cars, and do all of that. People out there saying, I don't trust it because of the phrases. I don't worry about that. That's not going to happen. But what you should be asking, how am I legitimate for the gasoline to those, the officers that need to be hired, maintenance and operation, that, because I already know that I can pay my credit card, right? I'm raising your taxes to pay the credit card. I'm not to take care of the maintenance and operations. And you and I both know, and hopefully the public is getting a glimpse of it, the state is capped, which it can raise taxes, your taxes, not your tax. Talking about your cannot go up more than 3.5%. It's a no revenue rate that it must. And so if appraised values come in exceptionally well and the city's tax rate triggers new revenue of more than 3.5%, it has to either lower its M&O or its INS. Right? It has to lower either one of those two tax rates. And the city's total tax rate right now is 50 cents. It's going to go to 60 some change with this bond if it passes. So of that, 40 cents is M&O, 10 cents INS. They're asking for another 10 cents. You have 20 in INS and 40 in M&O. As a growing city like ours, one of the new challenges it faces is, okay, values days will take care of all our new needs. Because I flattened out my tax rate. When I was on council, it was 63 cents. Just get an idea where we are now compared to when I was on council. And so that politicians, and I will admit for this discussion only, that I was a politician at one time. We lowered the tax rate from 63 to 62 cents. And next year, I think we lowered it to 61, and then it stayed flat. And all of a sudden, there's these huge tax breaks that are coming in for everybody in an effort to appease a group of voters, maybe the business people, the trade community, or maybe just the residents, or just re-election purposes. I'm going to lower your tax rate. Well, then lo and behold, here comes the state. You've already trimmed your tax rate from 63 cents down to 54, and the state says, "Oh no, you can't raise that either. I'm going to lower that because the only new revenue is 3.5%." Well, now the states, the state and the city find themselves at odds because you have just limited the ability to have my growth. All the companies we've done to attract businesses and to come in and raise our property values have fed all the new revenue instead of getting just 3.5%. Maybe our revenues come in at 8, 9, 10% more. That's money you set aside for paving your streets. That's money you set aside for all your food items, your police departments, your fire departments, your parks. Never worry about water, bridges, because those are enterprise. Those are managed by revenue that the ratepayer pays. I pay my water bill at home, but I also pay a water bill at business. Hotels pay water bills. Other people pay water bills besides the. That's why we refer to them as ratepayers. The ratepayers are the ones who are funding your utilities, your water and waste. The users of the landfill, over and above what you pay on your garbage, there are people put in commercial garbage into our landfill. They pay big rate. Those are separate aside. And so oftentimes people say, well, my water's not getting fixed. My pipes aren't going to get fixed. And this pump goes, no, not true either. That fund, that fund is not going to affect those funds. That's something different. You're going to see that coming next. For a warning, you may get a rate increase one day on your water and your water. That's separate. So is your garbage fee. Those are separate aside. So when we're talking about this bond, it's this general fund, and there are some limitations. So I say again, there are consequences to this election. If you pass this bond, you have struggles to get to pay those M&Os, right? Even though you're staggering some of these out over the year, you're not going to spend $417 million tomorrow. It's going to take a while to buy the land, a while to do the environmental assessments, and then the architectural, the engineering, and so it may be 5 years before you let out the biggest contract of all of them, which is construction at, say, 50 billion. That's when you're floating that bond. And so, again, there's time for your rates to mature and be able to afford this, but you may not have the money to do the maintenance and operation.
And that's a problem. But also, you talk about land. You mentioned land. You mentioned something in the beginning because of this is only for tactical gear and so on and so forth. You know how many ex-peace officers here sell tactical gear? A lot. And and I understand it. Everybody has the right to do that. So all of a sudden now we can go to ABC company and buy the full gear, tactical gear for $350. Well, guess what? Our old buddy from the union has a shop and he's going to sell it to us for $1,000. Hey, carne asada. And that we know that happens, man. And those are the shenanigans that people are trying to get away from. And I understand.
Well, I hear that. And let me push back a little bit. I hear that, but that's not happening. Vendors to the city of Laredo have to have all sorts of regulations and insurances to accomplish that. There are those firefighters and police officers who have set up shop and gone through the process of becoming legitimate vendors. Oftentimes, I've been in business 12 years here. We sell promotional items. We sell all these. It's hard to beat some of these national companies. And these guys are selling thousands of units a month compared to the city buying 100 units a year, maybe, or 200 units a year. It's hard to compete with those at that level. That said, there are some incentives for locals to be there's a what they call a reciprocal rate in there that we can go, if we're local, you can be up to 5% higher than someone who's not local, right? But that's 5%. I mean, in some cases, those guys are 15-20% lower than vendors in Laredo are. And so I get it. And I only say that because I don't want that to cloud issue. That's not why you vote against something like this, because this has so much more impact.
But we have
I would say this
empathy towards all the departments, and I get it from people out there, and you get everything else out there. And I'm like, one of the main things is that they already have the land. That was one of the things that came out, and then we're like, pardon?
That's a good point. That's a good point. But again, understanding which one we're talking about. If we're talking about police, I will tell you that part of what's not happened is all the reasons why this police headquarters was not in the CIP. For those who don't know, a CIP is a capital improvement program. It is planned every year. You have to submit a capital improvement program that says, for the next 5 years, we intend to buy and sell bonds or build and do these projects, and laid out. It's a schedule of projects that you want to do. In there, it tells you how much it's going to cost, where the funding mechanism is going to come. If it's unfunded, it stays in the funded section. But it's planned, and you're constantly looking for the opportunity to be able to do that project, to have windows of debt when you've lowered your debt. Like anybody else, I've got $10,000 credit limit on my credit card. I want to buy something, but it's going to cost me $4,000. I already have $4,500 on my credit card. If I put that other 45, it's going to affect my credit score or something. So the city operates the same way. They look at it and say, we're going to wait till we have our debt reduced, and then maybe we'll do that. But that's planning. All of a sudden, here's a $110 million facility that you didn't have on your plan for. What? And I asked that question. I was at the town hall and I asked that question. Why the pivot? If it was not in your CIP last year, the year before, and the year before, and what was in the CIP was a remodel and a expansion of the existing facility, what was the pivot? Why did you decide to build a $110 million facility? That's a reasonable question. I'm not picking on police officers having relationships with former police officers and the gear they sell, or those that have become realtors. That doesn't enter into the equation. What does is, why didn't you plan for it? What was it that made you all of a sudden this year, I want to build this new building? And the answer is, and the chief gave an answer. How legitimate the answer is in terms of are there other things they could have done to force the issue? Is it the fact that the city built that building in 1996, built out a general certificates of obligation, a bond sale that we had. So last time, like I said, we sold that bond in 1992. So that's 32 years ago. We sold that bond, and after that bond came that money to build that facility, but they built it on airport. And at that time, the airport had an indenture. It came over from the United States back in the 70s when it closed. It had a series of rules that said these funds must be kept separate and aside. All the land here generates revenue for aeronautical and non-aeronautical at the airport. You've got to keep these funds separate. If it wants to put a facility on airport land, it has to pay the airport a certain amount of money. And it does. In this particular case, it paid $37,000 a month for a land lease and the building across the street, Sanchez O'Brien, that they acquired. So when the city decides we're going to go out for a bond, let's go out and finally we're going to do this, they approach the airport about buying the land. The airport says, FAA says, I can't sell it to you. And so, if I'd known that, I might have taken such a hard stance against you guys all of a sudden deciding to build a building, but you didn't give me that information. And had I not gone, you wouldn't have known to ask that question. Other people may not have known to ask that question because they've never been in government before. They attend a few council meetings. They don't see anything. And the city didn't make an effort to explain to you why these things are needed. Why are we buying, why a new building? There's all the reasons. And again, they're limited in what they can do, right? Because they can't vote for it or ask you to vote for it. They can only give you information. But
now, with that said, we're still going to be paying for that building there for that lease. So
family for the airport at that point. I mean, you're going to pull $37,000 of revenue from the airport. Well, again, the airport doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It lives on the kindness of our Congressman Henry Cuellar, who gives us great grants to do the development and stuff that we do down there. And again, all the aeronautical around the airport derive rental revenue. Not looked at the airport budget, how healthy it is, and if it has a fund balance, struggling to keep its head up. I do know that the city, how they balance their budget and how they get their general fund to look healthy at times, is they go to these revenue funds, these enterprise funds, utilities and solid waste, the bridge and others. They charge them a general and administrative fee for attorney, and it's a large amount. It's 5 to 8% in some cases.
Let me tell you another generator for the city, and that's all the citations that are being given by our police force. And those citations generate a huge amount of revenue for the city, and people are forgetting that. So we have a bigger police force, it generates more citations. And unfortunately, it does. And there's something that, without everything coming up, somebody asked me a question and said, do the police really, are they there to save you because of safety? Are they there to protect you? And actually, because Supreme Court already came up with that. The town of Castle Rock versus Gonzales they do not have the right, the constitutional right to protect you as a civilian, especially when it comes out with a with a TRO or a temporary restraining order. I mean, that's case law by the Supreme Court. So why do we have more if that's not it is, if it's just a collection generating thing? So it puts you in a boundary there. Like, wait a minute, you're kind of right, man.
Well, but no, I mean, I get that all the time. I'm a big defender of the municipal court. And let me tell you, at one time I had a bone to pick with the municipal court because I thought exactly like you. They're there to generate. I mean, that's what they're due. It's a small town mentality. You put you put a police car out at the beginning of the thoroughfare, and it's 55 miles an hour, and a block later it drops by, you get a speeding ticket, right? Speed traps. Those things exist in small towns. I've seen it and believe that. But when those tickets get to there, some of those violations, motor vehicle violations, are state law. So the court has to divvy up that money. Some of it goes to the state, some of it goes for administrative fees, and some of it goes to DOT. I mean, some of it goes in other directions. And so they're not really there. And I will tell you that most judges, Chuy Dominguez being one of my favorite judges of all times, was Ornelas, and the judge once told me, "Hey, this is a court of compliance. I just want you to do what's right. I want you to, you come in there because you got a citation because you were burning stuff in your backyard, or because you didn't follow a P&Z law, or you were speeding. All they want you to do is comply with the law, because the court really doesn't make a lot of money. And given our situation, how much money the citizens of Laredo have, we're one of the poorest communities in the state and in the nation.
Are the poorest.
If you look at how much money is owed to the municipal court, it struggles to pay them, and I mean, they put them on payment plans, and you've had attorneys vie for the contract for collections. It's not that. Police department doesn't do that. I really hope that nobody walks away from this podcast thinking that police just goes out there to generate fees by giving you tickets. They're going to slow you down if you're speeding. If you're running a red light, they're going to stop you. They've got probable cause. I want to give them a certain amount of latitude and trust. But are there bad apples? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We've seen them all. Border Patrol has them. The Customs and Border Protection has them. The FBI has them. I mean, we're humans. We are infinitely flawed, right?
Yeah, and here in Laredo, we grew up with that, and we've seen a lot of bad apples, and we've seen a lot of great police officers that we have. Some of them are ex-students of mine, and so on and so forth. So it's not an attack towards them. There's just so many questions out there that they ask, and I'm being very open and blunt about it. And you're like, oh man, today I heard this other one was, why are we building this if we already have all those facilities? And I go, yeah, well, you're right on that. Where it's all going to go to contractors that it's going to come in here, all the friends of them. And I'm like, I mean, we've seen it before. We've seen that happen before. So how do we listen, the point here, no trust.
Just, I mean, so that you can ask this, because I ask this question, I get hit with that question all the time. If you were going to build something at your house, are you going to use a stranger? Somebody you have absolutely no clue who they are, whether they're vetted or not. You don't know where they're going to be in 5 years. Or are you going to use, right? So there's a certain amount of comfort level you have with certain companies that have been in Laredo for a long time, and you just happen to have a relationship. It doesn't mean that you're giving them preferential treatment. It just, sometimes you do that. Now, the city has some extremely.
Here's how that is. I'm going to explain it to you the way it was explained today. Right? I said what you said. I told them that, and the person said,
there's a process.
He goes, I'm from Nigeria. I go, okay. And he goes, and the problem is this, Paul, here in the United States, you're going to build a building and you hire people that you don't know, and you make a contract on the building that you're going to hire, and they're supposed to follow that. He goes, in Nigeria, you're going to make a building, the bank gives you the money, and you hire your brother who doesn't know anything about building the building. And he goes, and that's how Laredo seems to be working, like bacteria. And I started laughing. And I said, well, you got a point, man. You got a point.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It happens. I mean, come on, Paul. We were born at night, but not last night, right? We know it happens. But the reality is that those are the far between. The city has lawyers and contracts. I mean, I'm bidding on a project right now, and the amount of paperwork I'm having to supply them, certifications and Form 1 and triplicate, Form 2, 5 copies. And I mean, you're going through extreme bureaucracy just to get the fact that, isn't going to take my company to an IPO, 2 months from now. It's a lot of work for a little bit of work, but it keeps it open, pays our bills and stuff. But there are rules to this, and I tell everybody that. Yeah, people break rules, absolutely, but there are rules. Don't make any mistake about it. The purchasing here is actually an award-winning purchasing department. It has done well. Our auditors and our financial people have won financial awards over the last 30 years. When Rosario Cabello was there, she was our finance director and became ACM and then deputy city manager. I mean, her financial department soared through the roof. You walk in there and they've got on the wall. These are government agencies that look at our agencies. These are the kind of guys that they see something, call the FBI to come grab your computer. And they've won all the time.
The bottom line, Gene, and you and I know this, the trust is not there.
But the trust, but that's born out of a lot of things, not just this particular issue.
The ways, but it's funny to see that because it's happening, and it's not being. These questions are not being asked by people that do not know what's going on. It's being asked by people that know what's happening in Laredo. Some of them are businessmen for many, many years, and they're very concerned about the issues that are occurring. And we can't deviate from that because the trust has been gone from the city. They've depleted it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can bring it back. I do not know.
Once trust is lost, it's hard to regain, right? That's because you're always back to your mind. Right? You might learn to forgive, but you may not forget, right? But
right.
Let's kind of focus back on the bond for a second and finish up with the PD. So that's one of the reasons why they pivoted the building the way they're suggesting they building. Do I agree that that's what they need? No. Do I think they still need to work out the details with the FAA and the airport? Yes. The training facility was not in the CIP. It hasn't been. And mainly because for the longest time, back in 2002, they cut the ribbon over at the Laredo International Fire Law Enforcement Training Facility. The police department was a partner to the fire department to build that training facility because it lacked some funds, but if you could couple that with law enforcement, they were able to use some of that money, some of that grant money, some additional funds to. But to be quite honest, the fire department's never shared that with the police department. Because the police department want to share it with them. And as a taxpayer, I have a problem with that because I get it. Just like trying to, raising my 6 kids. If one doesn't want to share a toy with the other, I'm not going to go out and buy another toy. They're either going to share or they ain't playing with any toys. That's just how it works. So they want to build this facility that is $75 or $78 million. And they've got some different reasons why they're concerned about building it out there on Mines Road. The amount of time it takes to get out there for the police officer to go to training, especially if he's on the clock, and then maybe triggers overtime. They've got some good reasons. Are they strong enough reasons not to build it out there? I don't think so. They've got some concerns about privacy, the people that go there, some of the training, some of the confidential informants that wind up in some of these things, some of the undercover people, the UCs that go there. They've shared some of those concerns with me. But there are ways to mitigate that with good screening and those things. And at the end of the day, that's going to save the city $35 million if you build it there. You don't have to go acquire land. All the infrastructure's there. You don't have to go out and drag water lines and sewer lines and lines, everything else to develop a piece of land somewhere. That's already there. So if you're going to want me to give you 75 million, 70, then you have to agree, if we're going to sacrifice that tax rate, those tax dollars, then you have to agree to build it because it's a compromise. I'm going to meet you halfway. I'll let you hit me with the taxes, but go over there and save that $35 million.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. You see, I don't think they even looked at those avenues. I just think this is what we want. Either you opt for it or pass this, or I think that's what's going on here. And I think Laredo, I'm not speaking for them.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on in the sense of it's more of a want. We want it over there. Let's all work together for the benefit of Laredo. Right now, Laredo's number one. It's the poorest city in the nation. Second,
not the poorest, but certainly one of.
So we're in a pretty bad situation. Right. People are more likely with these tariffs. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how the import export is going to be here? Now we're going to be shooting the foot of the biggest business that we have here, which is import export, with all those warehouses, all those properties, and those individual big houses. We're going to be hitting them double, hitting everybody else double. So that owns commercial property or rents or property, because you're going to be paying more taxes and I want to see the leases that go up in the near future, especially if this goes through. You're going to see a dwindling more of small businesses.
Right.
And
again, expansions. You're right about that. You see those monies go up and stuff. I mean, those fees and those tax rates go up, and it questions whether this is going to cost me $50,000 taxes for this building and this operation I have. That's a salary. That's somebody's salary. That's increased salary for my staff or new equipment for my expansion to buy a new studio or a new building. I see that, and I can see where people have that concern, and rightfully so. And so again, when I go and I tell people, I'm not advocating that you vote for it, I'm advocating you vote against it. I'm advocating that you get as much information as possible so that you can make an educated decision of whether this is going to impact you in a good way or a bad way. And if taxes is the only thing you're going to focus on, be mindful that if you don't pass it, there's a consequence to not passing it, right? There's consequences to passing it. There's a consequence to not passing this. Texas prohibits you from buying any of the items you have on this bond election with a certificate of obligation for 3 years. So even though you have $20 million still left on your credit card here, and you could potentially have gone back and bought the police cars and the tack gear and the fire trucks, or added some more square footage to the health department or even the Hamilton, you're not going to be able to do that out of certificates of obligation because it prohibits you from doing that, because it looks at it as a circumvention to the voter. The voter told you no, so now you're going to go do this, which is why I know now that they had that capacity in their credit capacity. I would have taken things first.
Before.
Right?
Right. I would have taken care of that first thing. And if we weren't able to get it, then later on we'll tell people, this is what happened, this is what we tried, this is what we could get with this, and we're going to go out for the month. But this is more of either you like it or don't like it, and people are saying, what's getting here, Gene, is people are ticked off at the way they did it. You're seeing the reaction, and a lot of people out there say, I'm not going to go vote. Forget about it, it won't pass. No, you need to go vote for it not to pass. You have to vote against it.
If I can tell you, the city was born tonight, but not last night either, right? They're not. Yeah. My favorite phrase, my mama didn't raise no chump, applies to the city as well. They know what they're doing. No voter turnout election. That's why they're holding it in May and not in March, when you have primaries or in a general election in November, when you have eons of people hopefully come out. Well, this last election proved otherwise. I've had some discussions with my friend Sylvia Bruni that got pretty heated about the fact that nobody comes out to vote, and the party chairs couldn't drag enough people. We get them all to register. We get all these people to happily fill out nobody ever comes out to vote. So if you have a low voter turnout, but you have two very talented unions with political action committees that can drive and drag people, it has a good chance of passing if you don't come out. Again, and that's if you're opposed to it. If you're in favor of it, the police and fire are going to have your back if you're in favor of it, because they're gonna do it behooves them to. They are 2/3 of this ballot is them.
This is a union-based voting election, and the unions are going to be understand it. But people need to go out there if you oppose it. And it's not, if you oppose this election, doesn't mean you oppose the police or oppose the firemen. And that's what the police and the fire department and the city in general, the city managers, need to understand that if people oppose this, it's not against them. And they have to realize that. And I don't think that.
I think the vast people would admit. They'd cop to that in a hurry. They say, look, I'm not opposed to public safety. Who knows we need it? We need all the cops to get on the street. But does a new police station necessarily improve public safety? Some answers that would say yes, and there are some answers that say no, not really. Does a new training facility improve public safety? Maybe, well-trained officers and maybe some of the that you were talking about earlier that happens goes away. With a training facility, a training program. But again, I build this training facility. Now I got to pay for the training. Well, I don't have any M&O, but it all on the building.
Listen, most of I used to train a lot of police departments, as you all know. And I used to train a lot of police departments outside the city of Laredo. I used to train in other states, in other countries, and I've trained many.
I remember you bringing the French delegation one year.
And I used to train. And the first thing that goes in every budget cut is a training for the officers. First thing that goes. It's the first thing.
Training and travel.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's the end of the story. And somewhere along the line of 2010, everybody wanted the 8-hour certificates, and everybody wanted to collect 8-hour certificates on how to use a fork, to how to use paper clips, to handcuffs, and so on and so forth. And I'm being facetious for these guys because just a lot of nonsense certificates that were out there, and there were paper collectors on stuff that really wasn't good for the street. The calming down and the awareness in the streets is what's needed. And one thing that I can say good about this chief, I have dealt with policemen prior to this chief being in there, and now afterward. Now, since he's been in there, they're very cordial. Very cordial. Before, they're little assholes. And unfortunately, they've changed, and that to me is a plus. So I think right now the city has to start cleaning up each and every department, and has to do a thorough job to bring back the trust into the community that they apparently govern. Because right now, the community does not trust the city of Laredo one bit.
I would agree, Paul. And again, as a host and an interviewer, when you ask the question, right, and solicit an answer, sometimes it's hard to deliver what we hear, right? Because you've been on the other side of the podcast, right, on the other side of the microphone, being interviewed. So we go through our head, okay, what experiences have I had? What things have happened? And we blurt out the answer. I've had this experience happen to me, but that may not be representative of every interaction or every police officer. And so, but you said something in your statement right now that goes back to that last slide we were talking about, that they have not gone the optimization of the departments and the efficiencies and gone through all of that. They've not zero-based budget, for example, where you have to justify every paper clip you buy. And you don't have to do those exercises every year. You don't do it every year. I mean, there are ways to build hybrids of, these cost benefit analysis and zero-based budget styles that you can go through. But at least you've done that. And then you've gone and said, okay, now I'm going to execute what I found, right? I'm going to go ahead and put it in action, and I'm going to realign my resources. I'm going to rethink certain processes, these things, and then I'm going to every expenditure I've got outside of that and say, okay, I've gone as far as I can go with this. Now I need to go ask why. But first, you've done all that, and then you can probably beat yourself on the chest, guys. I have looked at. I mean, I've turned over every rock. I've squeezed out every turnip. I've got nothing left but to ask you for a 10-cent increase in your tax. Okay.
And I get that. That happens. That sometimes it happens. Sometimes you go through this whole thing and say, you know what? Next year I'm gonna have to raise the tuition monthly by $5. I'm sorry to tell you guys, but it has to happen. And people, or $20, and people kind of agree. When I started martial art training when I was 18, we used to charge $30 a month. Right now you're at $200 a month. Why? Because of the way things have grown. That was many years ago. I'm 56. I'm going on 20 years and 30 years of just teaching, 40 years of teaching actually. And so you start looking at these things, and 40 years. In 2 years will be 40 years of me teaching martial arts. Imagine that. So look at stuff like this. You start seeing things change and things going to fads, and fads can get you killed, and things of that nature. But you start changing up the dynamics to make things positive in the future. And we haven't protected our future. I think we've lived on a day. How can I say that? And to this is, we've allowed the same people that have caused problems in each department here in Laredo, and this is towards the city of Laredo, those that listening, especially the three assistant city managers, they've allowed those problems to continue festering inside those departments. And when people complain about that, they shrug and they say, oh, that person's disgruntled, continue doing your job. They don't fix it. And unfortunately, that trust has been lost by not only me, but many others here in the city. And now they told me they're forcing this bond to us. And I was like, well,
I mean,
I see your point. I guess see the rationale, but you know what I'm saying? So we really need to, as a city, as Laredo, and it's a beautiful community. The citizens are very resilient individuals, very proud people. You and from here, but we need to. The city has to bring back the trust, and I don't know how they're going to do it. They've lost it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if you look at the social media comments, if you stop at the coffee shop and talk to a few people, if you get, walk outside a church and shake a few hands, kiss a few babies, you realize, that the people, the electorate has lost its confidence in government at all levels, not just the state and federal. But I will say this to your point about the bureaucrats and the folks that you mentioned the ACMs and how typically they allow things to fester. At the end of the day, they execute the policy of execute the will of the council. So how do you hold the bureaucracy accountable, the city manager accountable, when you have a board council who says, okay, I've got Mr. Fry, that's not a big deal. I'm not going to focus on. I'm not going to fix that problem. You know what? That doesn't rise to my level. It rises to the level of the manager because it's a personnel issue, and council members should not be called personnel. They are only responsible for the city manager. That's their role. They have a confirmation and a affirmation of dismissal for those directors that fall into that bracket. But they should, at that point, when they have an issue, go to the city manager. This is a problem and you need to fix. Again, the buck stops with him. So when people say this bond is forced on, well, who forced it? The council could have said, you know what, we're not doing this. This doesn't. It's not time. We have concerns. We have questions. Can we delay it? Instead, it chose to go forward, with the exception of one council member. And to her credit, she's been personally vocal about her position on it. Professionally, she made her decision known, and she's done no more. But there are other council members I know that have questions. They have their doubts. The answers they got from management, I think, satisfied them well enough for them to say yes. So again, as a council member, as a former council member, if you're not able to get outside counsel, get people that are in your circle to talk things that you're voting on, and all you're doing is getting information, staff, you're going to run yourself into problems. You should honestly have a policy that says, I trust, but I verify. I trust my staff to do the work. I trust that they do the very best, and they give me their best advice, but I'm going to verify that because I know nothing about martial arts, and they're telling me that this martial arts tournament is this, that, or the thing. It's wrong to go to. No. Staff is telling me this is what they're saying. What say you? What's your opinion? Then I'll go to Jesse Coons over at Coons and say, hey,
Yeah, and talk to me.
what do I do? Or there's changes to our insurance policy. I'm going to go ask Blas Martinez, or I'm going to go ask Dr. Marta Martinez, member and doctor, hey, this is happening. Can you enlighten me? Not that I'm second guessing, but I just want a validation for what's been said to me so that I know I'm making a good decision.
And that's the way it should be. It's just like you and I, we've had that business relationship for a long time. I'll ask you, this is what's going on. What do you think? And you tell me that. But we're always co-verifying with everything else to see if we're going to make a decision. That's the way a good business mindset should be.
Yeah.
But and I'm not condoning their decision because that they're proper. That's what they have to do. And you look at the whole scenario. They can vote whichever way. But I think there is a managerial leak there. I think things that happen have residual effects. And through experiences, if I drop a ball and I know that's gravity, and since I was a little kid, I know it's going to be gravity. So through experience, I know that the ball's going to drop, so I'm going to be able to catch it, right? So if you're always dealing with the same people and they're always messing up, those experiences continue being harbored inside your head. So if there's always an issue, those experiences are going to put distrust, and that is exactly what's happened to the city of Laredo. The distrust that it has committed or formed with the citizens of Laredo is in magnitude.
No question. And whether it can or whether it will ever recover from that fully, I don't know. It's hard to say. But we've beat that horse to death on the show already. We know that probably the vast majority of people aren't going to vote for any other reason is that just don't trust the government to do anything right. Let alone money, right?
Yeah.
But if we're going to help the voters out there, if you and I are going to be good stewards of our platforms, our goal is, like we've done today, is just try to give you much information about how they came about their decisions, what is fact, what is fiction, what is hyperbole, what is and then at the end of the day, I hope I've armed you with enough information to either ask more questions, get the answers you want or need, or giving you enough ammunition to vote one way or the other. There are still some questions. I mean, I'll give you I really wanted, and we've gone a little something about the program because we're so passionate about what we want to do. But the bond in itself, you go to the next level, you go to the street paving. I've seen these streets get paved, and 3 years later, here we are again. And you're going to sell a $30 million, a $90 million bond that you're going to pay out over 8-10 years, 9 years, it is you decide, or 20, you decide to sell a 20-year bond or 30-year bond. My street's going to be at 3 years. What are you doing to get a paving program that is sustainable? The work you do today will last 5, 10, 15 years. And I had argued a long time ago on council that we ought to get a slurry machine and a chip sealer and be at the time, I won't name the director's name because he's a good friend. I really do value his opinion. It just wasn't worth it. Well, now they're looking at it and saying it's worth it. Okay, well, something's changed. Maybe the cost of asphalt or the cost of labor, something's changed to make that now a viable solution. And so when Ramon Chavez is manager, former city engineer, former utilities engineer, did his presentation. He's a subject matter, a lot of trust in what he says. Again, I've seen him come in as a junior engineer and work his way. When I was on council, he came in 2004, I think, joined the city. And so he's been there 21 years. And I've seen him grow as an individual, as a professional, and I trust his. Now, will I take his word, lock, stock, and barrel without checking it? No, I've got enough experience to ask the question. But when he did his presentation about the streets, and he said, we're going to do this program, and we're going to use a PCI, a pavement condition index. He was talking my language. He was singing the music too that I wanted to hear. Why? Because I've looked at other cities that have paving programs, and that's the first thing they look at. They start looking at the program as an objective mechanism to do what they need to do in terms of which streets get paved. Because before that, as you all know, as I know, gee, my street needs paving. The council member calls and says, "Hey, Chihuahuas, I'm going to talk to the city manager about putting this on the paving list. You know, can you tell me how long the street is? Can you tell me whatever information I needed? Go to the city manager and say, hey, I want you to, St. James on the paving list. Well, there could be 100 or in worse condition, but because Belmares doesn't live on that street, or whoever called me doesn't live on that street gets paved. That leads to the mistrust that a lot of people have. When he announced that he was going to do this program that has a pavement condition index, they're going to be transparent about what streets they are. They're going to take on a program that says, okay, before we get there, can we preserve the street by doing a slurry seal? Can we do some crack sealant before? All right, if that's good, then can we mill that road? Do we need to rebuild it? Based on a PCI, they're making that decision, and every year they put that on a program and sell a bond to cover that work, and those streets should last, longer. They're starting to focus, according to him, they would focus on the major arterials, the collectors, the minor arterials, the thoroughfares. And the reason you want to do those is because that's what carries the highest volume of traffic. And if I'm an elected official, I'm getting my phone calls from, not the neighborhood. I'm getting from the guy who's driving down McPherson at 45 miles an hour and he's hitting a pothole on a street that we paved 3 years ago. So again, they did it, they overlaid it, it didn't last, there's a street there in my neighborhood that they paved, and 6 months later, because they did not address the issue of irrigation that flows onto the street, that street was torn 6 months later. It was ago, and it's gone. That street is it would come out of the PCI at one of the worst ones. So
they're the same people to do it, and it's over and over that experience, and people are saying, look, it's the same companies again. So we really have to take a look as a city. Who am I? Because I don't have no voice or towards the city, just towards the people. And what happens is that trust has been lost.
Yeah. Again,
a lot of people in the city that I trust.
Back to why I vote for this thing. Trust has been lost.
But the municipality has lost the trust. And the bottom line, it's lost it.
But let me clarify something you said, because again, this is one of the reasons why people lose faith in the city, because the misinformation, the erroneous information, it's not that you intended to tell an untruth here, gets out. These streets that are being built, these streets that are being rebuilt are being built by Public Works, by the city of Laredo. That's not how I did it when I was on council. That's not how the city managers that I worked under did it. What they would do is they would sell a bond. They would contract companies that were out of city, even out of state. There was a company out of Kansas. Cutler Repaving would come in here in the wintertime when it could not work because of the weather. They'd set up a camp, and for 4 months, they would pave the heck out of all these streets at a reduced rate, because all they wanted was to keep their people working so they didn't lose their crews. So
going to private
entity, right? And we got a warranty with it. And when the project was done, so were the people. I didn't have M&O to keep up with. I had payroll and personnel equipment that I had to maintain. It all went with it. And so it was a very structured program. And other communities like San Antonio and Boston have those kind of programs. And their public works department, they're the ones that are doing the preventative work. They're doing the slurries. They're doing the chip seals. They're doing the crack seal. They're fixing the valley gutters. They're the ones that are doing the kind of things. Instead of putting out these construction contracts internally, and then what do you do once the project's over and the bonds have been sold and the money's exhausted and you still have and people that you need to that I think was something that the city has done that they should move away from, and advocate that a private sector that take it out for bid, drive those numbers down, get some really companies that have all the bond capacity and all the insurances and warranty. So if it breaks down in 3 years, but you're coming back to fix it, it's going to last 3 years. And so again, when he did that presentation, my mind said, this is one I could probably vote for. This is one that I could probably get behind if structure and ordinance or the mandate from council is you will exercise a program. This will not be a one-off, hey, go pay so-and-so free. Don't, let's not go back to the Mayor Martin days. I apologize if I that statement, but let's not go back to the days when we were paving people's ranches in private property. Let's make sure we are on a great program that is transparent. Here's all the streets we're doing. If you want to go out and drive and see whether it truly merits being paved, you can see it yourself. But there's a list, and the city's gotten better. Technology has allowed you to do that now. You can post these things on a website. You can see all the streets that are being paved. So this is just one that in my eyes, could be a good thing. But then if you don't do it, if you don't, remember I said there are consequences both ways. If you pass this bond, there's consequences. But if you don't pass this bond, you could potentially, come back and say, okay, well, my streets are paved. Oh, you see the programs.
That's going to be the case. And if let's say everything is not passed, the city's going to come back. That I told you, your house burned down. The firemen needed that new fire station 6 miles away from your house. That's why your house burned down. They're going to come up with excuses that it's all.
We, the electorate, cannot let them get away with that, because it was their responsibility to make sure that it was paid before that. It was their responsibility to make sure that they had managed that business well enough so that it could have those things cared for. Again, it's taken us 32 years to go out and have to do this bond again. What happened? We were doing well. Obviously, every city has its blemishes. I mean, not every city is a shining on the hill. All of us, we have blighted areas. We have streets that need work. We have water lines and aging infrastructure. I think the story of aging infrastructure is unique to Laredo. Go to any town USA, they're having the same issue. But are they managing their monies differently than we are? Are they managing the resources and what they get? Are they good stewards of our taxpayer dollars? If they are, it's visible. All the evidence will be visible to the eye. And if anybody says that Laredo's managing its city well, it's the contrary, right? 32 years later, we're having to ask for a bond. Well, again, I was on council. You could heap some of that. I was there. I was one of 9 for 8 years, 8 months. You could heap that on 7 months, and you could heap that on me as well. But as you look back in the rearview mirror, hindsight's always 2020. Could we have done better? Yeah, I think we could have done better. Did we do good? Yeah, a lot of it. Look at North Central Park. Look at the extension of Springfield, Shiloh, all the flooding that used to happen on went away. All the pressure problems in Winfield and Plantation went away. My term, we did good things. We got a new bridge. We passed a no smoking ban. So today, you don't come out smelling like a cigarette. Those are all good things that happen. more. Yeah, I'm certain of it.
I would say in the last 10 decades, the city has done this. And I hate to say that because there's not one in there. I think it was just managerial. We went through what, 8
Well,
assistant city
yeah,
managers, several city attorneys. One of them left saying that this was a corrupt city. I mean, those are stuff that we don't make up. That's stuff that's happening. But we both agree that the city has lost the trust, and that this election is a union election against against the citizens of Laredo that don't trust the city. And let's see what happens.
yeah.
And
I
I
tend
want
to
to
agree. But let me add this before we go, because I think it's important. You mentioned something that's just so absolutely true. We went through what, 6 city managers and terms and deputies in the process, in the course of 8 years. In the course of 8 years, 6 city managers, right?
and several city attorneys.
Right, and city attorneys, and when you don't have stability in your House leadership spot, there isn't a war or a campaign you're going to win. Look at San Antonio. Uh, City Manager Cheryl Scully was there almost 20 years. Now, you may not have agreed with every policy she ever espoused. You may not agree with some of her methods. Man, look at the proof is in the pudding. Look at San Antonio, how it's prospered in the last 20 years. Now, she's been gone now 4 years, I think, or 5 years since she left. But prior to that, she laid the foundation for the redevelopment of downtown and the expansion of the Riverwalk and the extension of the Riverwalk south towards the missions. Just great economic engines that she ignited down there. And look at San Antonio is going to be Texas' largest city at some point, in my opinion. And if you ask John Sharp from the Texas A&M University system, he will tell you that someday UTSA will be the university in Texas because it's got room to grow, it's got land, it's got a major international airport right there. It is at the heart of Texas, at the crossroads, 35, 10, 37, all of them run through there. They set themselves up for huge success. And we've had opportunities because we've had a change in leadership every 14 months.
Free trade zone all the way up to there. And they also very small business friendly, something that we don't. We have the trade zone, but we're not small business friendly. So we have to change the attitude. And some of these city councilmen live in a bubble thinking that everything's honky-dory, and it's not. They have to go out there and shake hands and talk to the people that they represent to realize what is actually happening. But my brother, we're running out of time. I want to thank you this. We both agree that the trust is not there, and that's basically the way.
I think that is the bond is going to come down to a vote of confidence in our city management and our city government. I am not an advocate that the city manager loses job over something that this thing not passing. I think we've seen the damage of a musical chair at the city management spot has done. I think when you have situations like this, you do what's called a post-mortem. You go back and you do an autopsy on what you did, how this whole thing went awry, and you recalibrate and you move forward. And I think you take it as a lesson learned. If I'm on the council, I would hope that my colleagues would agree to create a performance plan that says, hey, this is what we want going forward. But I don't think that pulling the rug out from somebody and dismiss over, an effort that he made. I mean, you do the best you can. You hope that everybody buys into it. And if they don't, you try again. Go back and try again. But this time, listen to some of the people. Tell you, there's a lot of folks, a lot of good folks in the community. My banker is one of the best guys on the planet. I love that guy. If he lets me shout out his name, I'll just use his initials, Joe Palacios. He's a smart guy. I mean, go and talk to John Real. Go talk to Open. There's so many people in this community. Mike Bosco over at McDonald's. Just great people. Get them in a room and guys, what are we doing here? What do we need to do? There is so much
Absolutely.
to learn from
That's the
folks.
next, and they need to do that.
Yeah,
They
there's
need
to learn from people who signed the front of the check versus the people who signed the back of it. But then you need to get down to the weeds and talk to the people. You need to be able to get out, and these town halls could have been done better. Get out and visit with the people, get eyeball to eyeball with them and say, "You need to gain your trust back. What do we do? What do I do as a councilman? What do I do as a civic leader? What do I do as a manager, director? How do I regain trust? What have I done to lose it? And then how do I fix that?" And be the hardest thing we have to do every day, Paul, is look ourselves in the mirror.
absolutely, and keep on going. Try to make ourselves better. And
Yeah.
sometimes away from politics, but when it comes home, and when you see these things over and over and over, these mistakes, and I don't want to call them out, and that experience you lose trust. I've lost trust in this city
Well,
at least a long time ago, and the firemen are good guys. They're always on point with accidents and such. But as my personal experience, just like dropping that ball, I've had way too many to go into this, and it's kind of, you and I have talked about it. But once more, the consent people is the lack of trust.
I agree. I leave you with this. I agree that this election comes down to just a lack of trust, and its only hope to pass is the unions, and you can call them self-serving or selfish, whatever. They know what they're doing. They know what they need. I trust that they're doing what's in their best interest, and oftentimes do not for a minute think that they're in our interest.
Absolutely.
Wants to see us safe. Firefighters want to see us safe. The city of Laredo, these guys that all work there, I mean, we can bitch and complain about them, but they're taxpayers just like you and I. They don't want to hurt us. They don't really want to hurt the city, at least not intentionally. I mean, I hope so. I mean, let me rephrase that. I would hope that they wouldn't want to do that. I trust that they're not. The vast majority of them are hardworking. They want to do what's best. Sometimes they're sides. Get the things they need, but you're right. This thing's going to come down to whether or not people trust the management and government, and those are two separate groups. Council and city management, rank and file. I can tell you, there's people in the rank and file that are going to vote no on this bond. That they have come out and said, "I'm not doing it." They know something on the inside that I don't, and so their perspective says, "Vote no." But I know folks out there who I know this is going to hurt, but they're saying we got to vote yes. So again, my role here today wasn't to tell you to vote yes or no. It was to tell you these are some of the reasons why the city's doing what it's doing and why we go from there.
And what I've talked about and what I said is what I've heard, what I've lived through, the experience that I've seen, issues that have occurred. And also too many people are against it, that people that are small businesses that are hurting right now, and they're like, well, what's going to happen? And they're already looking to go elsewhere in different towns. And you're going to see if this passes, you're going to see a mass exodus of small businesses leave. Watch. And some people would say, oh, well, another person would rent that space. We'll see.
Maybe not. I mean, I hope we're wrong, right? I hope you and I are wrong that if this thing passes, that all of us would tighten our belts and do what are you gonna do? I'm not going to close up shop and move to San Antonio or Austin. I'm going to tighten my belt and keep moving forward. That's all we can do as a community. Keep moving forward. But I wish more people. Paul, I hope that what we do today is gets more people to vote.
Yeah, that's all it is. People need to go out there and vote. If you're for it or against it, you have to go out there and vote, period.
That's right.
And I want to more, my brother. It was a great conversation. And folks, you're probably going to watch it. We'll watch it. Until next time.
I appreciate the time. Take care.